I spent my whole life thinking I was his favorite. Every story he told, every birthday card he never missed, every secret recipe he shared only with me. He really had me thinking all of that meant something and that we had a personal bond that was different from everyone else. But when he died and the will was finally released, everyone got a piece of his legacy except me. And when I asked why, my family told me something that shattered everything I thought I knew. My grandpa Thomas was the kind of man people called salt of the earth. Retired veteran, former high school teacher, volunteered at the food bank every Saturday, even mowed his neighbors' lawns for free. He was loved and respected, but to me he was just my grandpa. The guy who made me pancakes every Sunday morning when I was little. The one who taught me how to ride a bike even though I scraped both knees. The man who told me I could do anything, even when the world didn't believe in me. I wasn't just close to him, I was his person. Or at least I thought I was. Growing up, I was the oldest grandchild. The only one for almost 7 years. So yeah, I got spoiled. But it wasn't about money or gifts. It was the time he gave me. The undivided attention. The way he actually listened when I talked about school or crushes or my dream to go into journalism. He'd even say stuff like, "You're the only one who inherited my curiosity." Or one of my favorites, "Don't ever let anyone dull your shine. Especially not this family." Which does sound shady in hindsight. But at the time it just felt like love. My relationship with the rest of the family was complicated. My parents divorced when I was 9 and my mom, grandpa's daughter, kind of unraveled after that. There were years she was barely around. My dad did the heavy lifting, but grandpa stepped in where she couldn't. He made sure I had lunch money. He came to school plays. He even walked me down the aisle when I got married. Everyone knew we were close. Even my cousins would joke, "You better behave or grandpa'll leave it all to her." And he'd just smile. Didn't deny it. Didn't confirm it. But I always figured he'd make sure I was okay. Because that's who he was. So when he passed away last spring, peacefully in his sleep just shy of his 86th birthday, I was devastated. More than I expected to be. He'd been slowing down, sure. He'd had heart trouble the last year. But it still felt sudden. We had just spoken the week before. He sounded tired but clear. One random day I asked him how work was going and he told me to keep stirring the pot. That was great classic grandpa advice. These moments we spent together is why the funeral was really rough on me. Everyone came and showed their condolences, even family we hadn't seen in years. Even old students of his showed up. A few with canes, some with stories that made us all laugh and cry at the same time. And I tried to hold it together. Because I figured at the very least I could honor him the way I knew he'd want. But what I didn't know was that while I was planning the eulogy, my family was planning something else. Something that would blindside me in a way I still haven't recovered from. After the funeral, the whole family gathered at my aunt's house. She's the oldest of my mom's siblings and basically the unofficial matriarch now that grandpa's gone. Everyone was there. Cousins, uncles, great-aunts, even people I hadn't seen since middle school. They were all dressed in black, sipping wine and pretending like this wasn't the most awkward get-together in years. Eventually, my uncle stood up and clinked his glass like he was about to make a toast. But instead he said, "We're going to read the will now." It's what Dad wanted. He said no lawyers, just family. I already knew Grandpa had a will. He was organized like that. Kept a binder labeled "in case I croak." His words, not mine. But I wasn't expecting it to happen like this. No formal setting. No office. Just the family, some casserole, and a 10-page document printed on regular paper. My uncle started reading. It began the way these things usually do. To my loving children. To my grandkids who brought me joy. To those who stood by me through the end. All the standard heartfelt stuff. Then came the specifics. He left his house, a 2-story property he'd lived in for 40 years, to my Aunt Margaret. His car, a fully paid-off Subaru, to my cousin Ryan. His savings account, nearly $100,000, to be split evenly between all the grandchildren. All of them except me. I sat and patiently waited for my name to be mentioned like it was a personal message just for me coming. Or a paragraph saved just for me at the end. Anything would be nice. But unfortunately my name was never mentioned. Not even once. All I could remember was sitting there, frozen. I really couldn't believe it. I looked around the room and waited for someone to say something. For someone to call out the mistake and say, "Hold on, where's her portion of the will?" But not one should stepped up and spoke on my behalf. Not even my own mother. She was sitting right across from me, flipping through the last page like it was just an old magazine. And when I finally spoke, barely louder than a whisper, I said, "Was there another version of this? Something else?" My uncle cleared his throat, avoided my eyes and said, "This was the most updated version. Dad made a few changes before he passed." That's when I felt it. The tension that had been bubbling quietly underneath all year suddenly boiled over. I asked what kind of changes did he make and why would he make them so close to the end? Because I knew Grandpa and I knew how he felt about me. This made no sense whatsoever. I was so hurt and ashamed at the same time. And then my aunt, with her fake sweet voice, said, "Well, you know, things got a little rocky between you two when you started pulling away." I said, "Pulling away? I never once pulled away, or however you said it. What happened is I got married, found a new job and grew up. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I still made sure to give him a call every week. I even sent him cards and I visited him any time that I got the chance. But apparently that wasn't enough, and after the reading, everyone tried their best to avoid me. You know that uncomfortable shuffle people do when they don't want to be part of someone else's awkward moment? That happened. People stopped making eye contact. My cousins suddenly had calls to take. My mom busied herself with dishes. I sat there like a ghost, the one person Grandpa supposedly adored, completely erased from his legacy. And in that moment the question wasn't, why didn't I get anything? It was, who changed his mind to cut me out? And what did they say about me to make him do it? That whole night I couldn't sleep. Not because I was sad, but mostly because I was furious. It didn't make sense. This man helped raise me. He taught me to ride a bike, helped me with college apps, walked me down the aisle, and suddenly I didn't exist in his final wishes? Something was off. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about Grandpa changing his mind. Somebody got to him. The next morning I called the lawyer listed on the binder Grandpa used to keep everything organized, the infamous "in case I croak" folder. Turns out the attorney he'd used for over a decade had retired about 2 months before Grandpa passed. I asked who handled the most recent revision. He said, "Oh, that would have been done through the in-home hospice notary. Likely someone referred by the family or facility." Now I was even more confused. Why would Grandpa rewrite his will while sick under hospice care without calling me or telling anyone directly? He hated doing things last minute. He kept receipts for every transaction. He once got mad because I returned his screwdriver to the wrong drawer. This wasn't the usual Grandpa, so I started asking questions. First, I called the hospice nurse who'd been caring for him during his final weeks. She was sweet, polite, said he'd had some lucid days and some confusing ones. She told me, "There were a few visitors who came often. Your mom and your aunt mostly. Sometimes your uncle. They were protective, I guess." I asked what she meant by protective. He said, "There was one day he kept asking for someone named Lucy. I think that was you." I gave a real slow nod while she was talking. She continued, "He asked for you a few times," she continued, "but each time someone said you were out of town or busy. Eventually he stopped asking." I hung up the phone and just sat there for a second. He asked for me while he was dying and they told him I was too busy? I wasn't even out of town. No one ever told me he asked for me at all. They kept me away. I didn't want to believe it, I really didn't. But deep down something started twisting in my gut. And once I let that thought in, I couldn't shake it. My own mother, the one who disappeared for years when I was a kid, had always resented how close I was to Grandpa. So had my aunt. They'd never said it out loud, but you could see it in the way they rolled their eyes when he praised me, or how they downplayed every award I got. They'd always acted like I was just too much. Like I was way too opinionated. Too close to him, a little too different for their comfort. And now, with Grandpa sick and barely being able to advocate for himself, they had the perfect opportunity to change everything. I went back to the will, the printed copy from the day of the reading. I started looking through it and something caught my eye. Something was off with the notary stamp. It wasn't from a law firm or official service. It was from some mobile notary service that mostly handled title transfers and quick forms. I googled the woman's name. She had no legal background. Just a certification and a license to notarize in the state. That didn't mean the will was fake. But it did mean it could have been pushed in front of him during a moment of confusion or exhaustion, especially if he trusted the people around him. I tried bringing it up to my mom. I didn't accuse her. I just said I had questions. She tried to brush it off and said, "Don't start this, Lucy. It's done. Let the man rest." Let the man rest? He was practically my second father. And you want me to just accept that he forgot to include me after 86 years of love and loyalty? No way that was going to sit right with me, so I went digging. I called the bank. Asked if Grandpa had made any major changes to his financial accounts around that same time. The clerk looked up the history and said, "Actually, yes. About 2 weeks before he passed, he moved all his accounts into a new joint trust account under his 3 children's names. It was unusual, but not illegal. No mention of me. No explanation. And just like that, they locked me out of everything." I finally called my cousin Rachel. She's the one family member I halfway trust. Younger than me, never really involved in the drama, always tried to stay out of it. When I told her everything I'd uncovered, she hesitated, then said, "I didn't want to say anything, but, yeah, something felt weird. Grandpa kept asking if you were coming. Every time Aunt Margaret would change the subject or say you were going through something." I asked why no one called me. He said, "They told us you already knew. That you were staying away because things were tense." How exactly were things tense? The only tension was between them because I existed. Because Grandpa loved me loudly and I didn't shrink myself for anyone. I sat with that for hours and tried to talk myself out of it. Tried to tell myself that maybe he really did mean to leave me out. Maybe I misread all those years. Maybe love doesn't mean legacy. But that wasn't true because I know what we had. I know how he looked at me. I know how he spoke about me. And I know, deep down, he would never have cut me out, unless someone helped him do it. I gave it about a week. 1 week where I didn't reach out. Didn't call. Didn't show up at my mom's house demanding answers. I just sat back and watched. I watched how quiet everyone got now that the money was in their hands. My aunt started posting pictures of renovations, Grandpa's house, but make it modern. My cousin Ryan bought a brand new truck and posted it with the caption, "Hard work pays off." The same cousin who used to complain that Grandpa was old and stuck in his ways. Yeah, hard work my ass. Meanwhile, I was still trying to understand how this happened. Legally, emotionally, everything. So I scheduled a consultation with an estate lawyer. Explained what I knew. The sudden will change. The hospice setting. The mobile notary. The fact that Grandpa had asked for me and no one told me. He nodded through the whole thing. Then he said, "It's going to be hard to prove undue influence without direct evidence. But, if anyone slipped up and admitted something even casually, that could open a door." So that's what I waited for, for somebody to slip up and he'll have my proof. And what's ironic is that it came faster than I thought it would. One night I got a call from my cousin Rachel, the only one who ever checked in on me. She sounded nervous. Said she was at my aunt's house and overheard something. Apparently my mom and aunt had been drinking, celebrating that everything went through without drama. And my mom said, loud enough for Rachel to hear, "We had to protect him from Lucy. She would have just used the money to leave the family for good." That was it. That was their ultimate reasoning on cutting me out of the will. They thought I didn't deserve a dime. Because I had boundaries? Because I didn't spend every second catering to their drama? I thanked Rachel and hung up the phone. I finally felt something I hadn't felt since the funeral. I finally felt some clarity. They didn't cut me out because Grandpa changed. They cut me out because they couldn't handle how much he loved me. And when they had the chance to silence that, to erase it from the records, they took it. But they couldn't erase what he said to me. They couldn't delete the letters he wrote. They couldn't rewrite the decades of memories I had with him. The man who made me feel seen when no one else in that family did. They can keep the money in the house. Keep the Subaru and the backyard grill and the precious china no one even liked. Because at the end of the day, I know who I was to him. And I won't let their bitterness rewrite that. The thing about being the quiet one in the family, they forget you're watching. They assume you're done just because you don't scream. That silence means surrender. What they don't realize is that sometimes silence is strategy. Because while they were out spending Grandpa's money, I was gathering receipts. I started with Rachel. She felt guilty and honestly I didn't blame her. She wasn't part of the scheme. She was just another bystander too scared to say anything at the time. But now, she was done staying quiet. She started telling me everything. She started telling me about the days leading up to Grandpa's passing. All the hospice visits. And how my aunt brought papers in a manila folder and told the nurse she was just helping him organize things. And how my mom told her not to mention Lucy because Grandpa was too emotional and needed to stay calm. Or lucid enough to start asking why I hadn't came to the hospital to visit. Rachel had screenshots and everything. A group chat between her and two of our cousins. Nothing dramatic, but there was one message that made my heart stop. It was from my aunt. Right after Grandpa passed. The message had said, "We handled everything. Clean and quiet. Let's just hope Lucy doesn't cause a storm." I took that to the lawyer. He leaned forward, read it twice, then said, "That is exactly the kind of thing that could flip this." He explained that if we could prove undue influence or manipulation while Grandpa was under medical care, we could challenge the will. It wouldn't be easy, but it wasn't impossible. At this point I had nothing to lose, so I was all for it. Next, I started requesting records, medical logs, and visitation sign-in sheets from the hospice. Even security camera footage from the front entrance. And guess what? There was no record of me ever being contacted or denied a visit. And why is that? Because no one ever told me he was asking for me. They just lied to him, said I was busy. And lied to me, said everything was fine. It was all carefully managed. To keep me out of sight. So I'd be out of mind. But here's the part that really got me. Grandpa was real smart and left behind a journal. Rachel aged, she found it while helping clean out the garage. It was tucked in an old metal box labeled Scrap Notes. Everyone thought it was just a collection of gardening tips and crossword puzzles. But inside, there were handwritten pages from the last 3 months of his life. Most of it was him just rambling off, but some of it was crystal clear on what he was saying. One of the pages said, "I miss Lucy. I wonder why she hasn't come to see me. That's not like her. I wonder if I said something wrong to her." Another page said, "Margaret says Lucy is mad at me. That doesn't feel right to me. I want to hear her voice for myself." I think that was enough. Enough to prove he wanted me there. That he never stopped loving me. That the story they told everyone, that we grew apart, was a lie they told to cover their tracks. I filed the paperwork 2 days later. It was an official document. I was contesting the will. When my lawyer sent the notice to my family's attorney, it didn't take long for the group chat to explode. My phone buzzed non-stop. My aunt texted me first. "Really, Lucy? After everything he did for you?" Then came my mom. "This is exactly why we didn't tell you anything. You've always been dramatic." Funny how the gaslighting started pouring in. Calling me dramatic is a clear example. But I wasn't being dramatic. This was survival. This was actual justice. This was me finally refusing to let them rewrite the story again. I didn't reply to not one of them. But you know who did reach out to me? My uncle, the quiet one. The same man who read the will at the funeral and didn't look me in the eye once. He called me and said he wanted to meet so we could just talk. So I agreed on neutral ground at my local coffee shop, Starbucks. And the second we sat down, he leaned forward and said, "I didn't agree with what they did. But I didn't know how to stop it." I stared at him for a second. Tried to figure out if this was some setup or if he actually felt guilty. He sighed at first, then went on to say, "Margaret and my mom had been pushing Grandpa for weeks. That they convinced him that I didn't care anymore. And that I had outgrown the family and was probably just waiting for a check. They told him you'd changed too, that you didn't call as much and that you were embarrassed by him." I felt my stomach twist when I heard him say those horrible things. Because yeah, I hadn't called every week like I used to. But I was dealing with a job, a broken marriage, a lot of life. And they used that, twisted it into a weapon to make me look selfish. Then he dropped the bomb. He tried to reach out before he passed away. He asked for your number again and they told him you changed it. But I haven't changed it at all. I've had the same number for 10 years. They just didn't want him to call me. They didn't want me anywhere near him when they pushed that will in front of his frail hands. And now they were about to find out that lies don't stay buried. The legal process moved slow like molasses, but I had no choice but to be patient. We had Grandpa's journal entries and Rachel's screenshots. We also had the nurse's statement. And now my uncle's quiet confession. Even the estate lawyer handling the current will started to backpedal. Said he had no idea the changes had been made so close to the end, and that he was just given the documents to process. No witnesses and no verification that Grandpa even understood what he was signing. My lawyer told me, that's enough to raise red flags in court. And there were red flags all over the place. Then came the moment I wasn't expecting at all. It was a letter from the notary herself. She'd gotten wind of the challenge. Apparently my aunt had pressured her into signing without a full walkthrough, told her it was standard hospice stuff, and everything had already been discussed. She admitted she never read the full contents of the will. Didn't verify Grandpa's understanding. Didn't even ask who the beneficiaries were, just stamped and signed. Which means the whole thing could be void and possibly reversed. Court was set for a Tuesday morning. The courtroom wasn't anything like what you see on TV. No dramatic gasps, no pounding gavels. Just a probate judge, a stack of documents, and one long table full of family members trying to pretend they weren't squirming in their seats. I walked in calm on the outside, but on the inside I was shaking nervously. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about legacy, about truth, about the version of my grandfather that they tried to bury with him. My aunt showed up in pearls like she was attending a brunch. My mom sat next to her, arms crossed, face tight. No one looked at me, except for Rachel, who gave me the smallest nod across the room, and my uncle, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. When the judge called our case, everything moved faster than I expected. My lawyer stood and calmly laid out the challenge. He presented all the evidence. From Grandpa's journal entries, the hospice nurse's statements, and the screenshots of messages where my aunt clearly talked about keeping me away. He even showed the letter from the notary, the one where she admitted she never verified Grandpa's mental capacity or asked any clarifying questions. The judge's eyebrows raised at that one. So this document was signed without any legal counsel, under hospice care, with no confirmation of clarity of mind? He looked directly at their lawyer, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Then it was their turn, and their defense to all the presented arguments was pathetic. My aunt stood up and said, "We did what was best." Lucy hadn't visited in months. She was distant. Dad was hurt. The judge raised a hand and said, "Is there written or recorded documentation of Mr. Thomas stating he wanted to remove her from the will?" The courtroom went silent, but then my backstabbing mother jumped in and said, "My father told us that he didn't trust her anymore." But again, they had no proof to back up their claims. Not one piece of evidence. Not a voicemail. Not a note. Not even an email. Just two people trying to sell a story with nothing to back it up. Then came the turning point. The judge asked to see the notary letter again. He read it, paused, then asked if she was present. She stepped forward, looking nervous but honest. Said she was called last minute and no lawyer was present at the time. She said my aunt was the one who handled the papers and that Grandpa barely even said a word. The judge nodded real slow and told her that was all he needed from her. Then he looked back at the table and asked the question that changed everything. Did anyone in this room benefit financially from the changes made in this will? Of course they did. Everyone got compensated except me. So he followed it up and said, "And did any of those individuals also assist in the execution of the document?" Which again they all did. My mom shifted in her seat. I guess that question made her feel a little uneasy. My aunt tried to jump in again, but the judge stopped her. "You are listed as the sole witness to this signature, despite having a financial stake. That is a direct conflict of interest." Within 10 minutes, the judge ordered the will invalidated. It didn't matter that the changes had already gone into effect. Nothing that they did with their money before the judgment mattered. The only thing that mattered was that the revised document wasn't legitimate from the judge. And since no legally sound replacement existed, the estate would revert to the previous version, the original one Grandpa had on file before the hospice revisions. And you look at the papers, my name was right there, clear as day. After court, my aunt stormed out and didn't say a word to anyone. My mom followed right behind her, but not before stopping and saying, "I hope you're happy, you just made a mess of everything." I didn't respond because there was no need to. I didn't say anything, not because I won, and I didn't let them completely erase me. Because I fought for the truth, and Grandpa's legacy was his again, not theirs. It's been 3 months since the judge reversed the will. The house went to my aunt, as Grandpa originally planned, but with a note in the original version that it was to be maintained, not flipped for a profit. The savings account was to be split evenly between all the grandkids, including me this time. And the last page had a special letter that was typed. And by looking at the signature, it looked as if the person had shaky hands when singing it. The letter said, "If you're reading this, I hope I've done right by you. I know I won't be around to say everything I need to, but I trust you know how much I loved you all. Some of you showed up for me. And if you didn't, but that's life. Lucy, keep stirring the pot. It suits you." That part was really heartfelt because I cried reading that more than I cried the funeral. Because that was him, the man I loved. The man who raised me to speak up even when it hurts me deeply. The money's sitting in my account now. But I haven't touched it. I still don't know what I'll do with it. I'm thinking about donating a portion to the food bank he volunteered at. And help start a scholarship in his name. I'm not sure, I just want to find the best way to honor his name the right way. As for the rest of the family, nobody talks to each other anymore. Rachel and I still text from time to time. And my uncle secretly sent me a thank you message on Facebook. He was thanking me for not dragging him down with the rest in front of the entire courtroom. But for my mother and my aunt, we absolutely have no communications whatsoever. After what they tried to do, I don't think I could ever forgive them for that. We are absolutely done. I don't need the fake forgiveness or empty apologies from them. They didn't just try to steal money, they tried to steal my place in my grandfather's life. They tried to rewrite history. And cut me out of an inheritance that he personally gave to me. They tried to say that I didn't love him and that I abandoned him on his deathbed. And when you let people do that, you lose yourself, so I didn't fight for the will. I fought for my story. And I got it back. Have you ever been betrayed by family, over money, inheritance, or something even deeper? Drop your story in the comments. You never know who might relate, or who needs to hear what you've survived. And if you want more true stories just like this, real, raw, and ridiculous, hit that subscribe button and help us get to 1,000 subscribers. Until next time, stay loud, stay bold, and never let anybody rewrite your story.